You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Still having trouble speaking today. Thanks to the sinuses, I have not spoken much at all today. Thus, we have, for those watching, a skeleton light situation. Still 4 lights, just not the 7. Anyway, I want to get into, as I had said we were going to do, into the whole the game by game predictions I came up with. We'll do that in segments 2 and 3. We'll split them straight up 6 games each, and I'll give you my reasonings for all of them. I had scores and everything. We'll get into all of that, but let's talk about this Matt Weiss situation a little bit more now that we know a little bit more, because now we have at least, and the hat tip to Josh Henschke for finding the public records from the DPSS, the log from the campus police. They apparently had responded to Schembechler Hall on January 5th. We at least now know a little bit about what computer crimes means. It, in this case, apparently means that they responded to a call that someone had illegally accessed someone else's email. So it sounds like that is the issue that Matt Weiss has. So it's not great, but it's certainly not worst case scenario. And I think that the question is how bad is this? And is this something that Michigan is willing to put up with, right? And I know that there are people on the board saying that Michigan was going to try to push him out anyway. I don't know how true that necessarily was or is in advance. Got to remember, he's kind of Harbaugh. He was the guy that Harbaugh was going to take with him to the NFL for sure. There's a lot of loyalty that Jim Harbaugh tends to have as well. So I don't know necessarily that is what would have happened if that didn't take place. I think the question is, now that this has happened, how bad is it? And is it something that Michigan wants to deal with? And I think it all depends, like I said, on the severity. If it's, I mean, we don't really know, right? Like, we don't know if it's him trying to find out personal details about somebody. We don't know what the motivation was, and it's probably best not to speculate. But like, we don't know exactly what went down. We don't know if he sat down at a computer that already had email open and then he went through it, because that's also could be considered the same offense. So I don't know if it's like a hacking situation or if it's something that was a little less nefarious, a little bit more innocent, and ended up being something where maybe he saw something he shouldn't have in one regard, and that upset the other person. So we just have to wait and find out. But the question is how much does Michigan want to give him any kind of leash? Because I know that people want to see more high-flying offense and some of the play calls, which, again, we don't really know who is the person making those play calls in the red zone. I feel like in a lot of ways, Matt Weiss has become something of a scapegoat. I have had plenty of conversations with him, and he's a really, really bright guy, and he really knows what he's doing. But that doesn't preclude him from making mistakes if he is the one making some calls here and there. That doesn't mean he's the only one making those calls. The buck stops with Jim Harbaugh, right? Jim Harbaugh signs off on all of those. This isn't a Josh Gaddis situation where Josh Gaddis was the one calling all the plays. So I think that in some degree, people have their scapegoats. Even Alabama's had Pete Golding and lately Bill O'Brien, and You know, they almost never does everyone love everyone that they have on staff, as far as the fan bases are concerned. But how long is Michigan gonna let this drag out? Because the bad thing, even though this sounds like this is, this isn't football related. The bad thing is that it's another bad thing from this offseason. There are articles out there. I saw Pat Forty from SI wrote an article talking about Michigan. I didn't read it. I'm just going off the headline here, but like Michigan's tumultuous offseason. And that's the type of press that obviously Michigan doesn't want. But I don't also think that Jim Harbaugh himself cares that much, as long as it doesn't affect his team and it doesn't affect the recruiting aspect. So we'll see where it goes. It's not a good personal situation for Matt Weiss. Obviously, it's not, even though it's pending an investigation, it's not something that's so egregious that he wasn't fired on the spot, According to Angelique Shingelis, it happened between December 21st and 23rd, though the police report came out came out yesterday, but it happened on the 5th. But certainly, I'm sure that Michigan had some wind of it beforehand. And if that's the case, then he got to go and coach in the bowl game and all of that. So again, it's mitigating the risk and all of that kind of stuff. I feel like I'm just talking myself in circles here. So anyway, I'm not going to say it's not a big deal, because it is, but we just don't know how big of a deal it is. And at the moment, it doesn't look like it's the worst case scenario. So that's the good thing. We'll see what kind of intel the investigation provides and where Michigan goes from there. But otherwise, the good news is, his status aside, they're bringing the band back together. This is the situation that we hoped for last year. Instead of all the shuffling, Michigan's got a lot of hype. I watched a couple. I was waiting to go on Sirius XM earlier today. I was watching a couple clips on YouTube. I watched Josh Pate and JD Pickell. They both have had some extremely glowing things to say about the Wolverines at this moment. They are going to be a team that is thought of and hyped up as one of the best teams in the country, as they should be. All right. Let us move on. We're going to get into the schedule stuff, my game-by-game predictions, momentarily. Before we do that, betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from pro football, college basketball, based NHL, whatever you want. Got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's get into these early game-by-game predictions. We'll do 6 each per segment here. If you've already seen it on Wolverines Wire, you're just going to get a little bit more of my analysis. Maybe not. I don't know. You might just be getting the same thing. I'm not going to read what I said, but it's the same things I was thinking when I put pen to paper. So I've been holding that in for a while. Don't have a cough button on the podcast, but can always quiet it, which we will do. Anyway. So East Carolina's week 1. East Carolina is not a slouch of a team. And I know people are going to sit there and say group of 5, non-conference. Look at this non-conference again. East Carolina is a decent group of 5 team. Now they lost to pretty much everyone that they should have lost to and beat everyone they were supposed to. They went 8-5 a year ago. But they lost to Houston, I believe. Yeah. NC State, Navy, Houston, Tulane, and Cincinnati are the 5 losses. So those are all pretty good teams, right? Navy, maybe not so much. But the other ones are. Tulane beat USC. Cincinnati wasn't quite as good as it was the year beforehand. NC State early in the season, which that was their first game, was considered to be very good. Dennis Leary leading the charge and everything. But threw for 3,700 some yards. The Holton Ollers, he's gone now after this, but they have a pretty high flying offense, or at least they have had, and they've been a pretty good team. Defense is not that great, but the offense has been. But they've got some turnover there. And I was talking actually randomly to a photographer at the Fiesta Bowl who said that ECU is one of her teams, and she's like, I'm looking forward to that matchup because ECU prides itself on being physical. She's like, that's going to be a good game. I don't think it's going to be that good of a game. Michigan's just going to be better. I wouldn't be surprised if it was closer than what I'm predicting, but I'm predicting Michigan 52, East Carolina 13. Because I think that now there will be some potential defensive issues for Michigan without Mozzie Smith and Mike Morris or Iabi. But I mean, they've got a lot of guys that have a lot of experience that are going to be on this defense. So ECU plays in the American Conference. So, I mean, it's not a slouch of a team, but it's certainly not going to be up to Michigan's par. Up next, week 2, we've got UNLV. First time coming to the Big House since 2015 in week 3. UNLV was not as good. They were 5-7 a year ago. They are not good on offense. They're not good on defense. But at 5-7, that's still better than like Hawaii in week 2, right? It's a team that can do some things. So, but nonetheless, not very good overall. They started off pretty hot, 4-1, and then just started losing. Cannot imagine that they're going to win in week 2 or come anywhere close. I think this would be the one game where Michigan, out of the 3, where Michigan really runs through its roster in the second half, barring some kind of cataclysm. Michigan 48, UNLV 3. And that's just because I'm not going to predict any shutouts anywhere ever. Up next, Bowling Green with a familiar face, couple familiar faces on the coaching staff, familiar face in at quarterback, Connor Bazelak from Indiana, transferred to Bowling Green. He goes from Mizzou to Indiana to Bowling Green. It's a heck of a trajectory. But nonetheless, he's a guy that didn't necessarily have success against Michigan, but he knows what it's like to play against Michigan, a la Rocky Lombardi with NIU. It didn't go well for him. But nonetheless, you have that, and then you have some guys that certainly want to be able to have some bragging rights. Scott Loeffler, former Michigan quarterback and coach. Eric Soup Campbell, wide receivers coach there. He was on Jim Harbaugh's staff in 2015. So it'll be interesting to see how they all kind of work that together. This was a 6-7 team a year ago. They lost to New Mexico State in the Quick Lane Bowl, I believe. They did beat Marshall last year, I noted. Marshall, who beat Notre Dame, who lost by a touchdown to Ohio State or something like that. Transitive Property says they're pretty freaking good. Nonetheless, Michigan 55, Bowling Green State University, Falcons 10. Up next in week 4, I've got Rutgers. Well, not I've got Rutgers. That's just what's on the schedule. Second half of last year, weirdly, is kind of an anomaly for Michigan against Rutgers in recent years. Rutgers has played Michigan very close, and they had the halftime lead last year or something like that. I don't remember. I was in a fugue state. But then Michigan's second half went nuts. The only thing I really remember from that first half was Rutgers was able to move the ball with Gavin Wimsatt, and the touchdown to Blake Corum by Blake Corum didn't count. And it was the best picture I had all year. So I was really disappointed in that. But because I was right there, he ran right at me. Nonetheless, this one's in Ann Arbor. It's early in the season, which I think if you're Rutgers, you want that rather than playing mid to late season when their confidence has been absolutely decimated. I don't know who the quarterback is going to be. They always seem to have a million guys. The defense has tended to be pretty good, but the offense has not been. It was for a half against Michigan. That said, I think that it will probably play out somewhere between 2021 and 2022. And I think people will freak out. So I'm going to predict that. This is part of the predictions. I think that we're going to have to deal with people flipping out after the game and being like, this team can't beat Ohio State, as if we haven't been through this a million times. I've got Michigan beating Rutgers 31-17. Week 5 brings Michigan's first road game and goes to a rebuilding Nebraska team under Matt Rule. So that'll be interesting. I know they've gotten some transfers and stuff incoming. I don't really... Let's see. I can look this up. I have a computer here. Just I don't like it compared to where camera was right here. And it's like way over here. So I have to look way over. For if you're listening, it doesn't matter, which most of you are listening rather than watching. But let's see. Nebraska transfer portal. See if we can pull this up real quick. So 2023. All right, so they got some dudes, and now they obviously lost Ernest Hausman to Michigan. Gonna spill the state secrets. So they got some guys. MJ Sherman, a former 4-star edge rusher, transferred from Georgia. That's looks to be the headliner, if I'm not mistaken. They got Elijah Judy, the younger brother defensive lineman from who's the brother who went to Texas A&M. He's the brother of Jerry Judy. Got Jaden Gould, the cornerback. Or actually, no, they had him. He went to Syracuse. I'm reading this wrong. All right, that's pretty much it. It doesn't really look like they've got anyone that's really going to break the bank. I don't really see like Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech, quarterback. I mean, he's had his moments. So, yeah, Matt Rule's known to turn around programs. I don't know if you can turn around that quickly. So, that would be pretty crazy. Nonetheless, it's Michigan's first road game. Nebraska, we'll see what they do on the early going. But I have Michigan winning 35-21. Note, some of these are closer. I don't think that necessarily, again, means much, right? We've seen even Georgia have some games like this, but I do think that Michigan will probably be better than some of the scores here, but knowing how I've predicted things in the past and how they end up going, I'm kind of erring on the side of caution here. Tough assignment for Michigan because they follow up the trip to Lincoln with a trip to Minneapolis. That's 2 flights for me. That's great. I'm better about flying, but it's more about just travel. Anyway, Minnesota has been a tough team, kind of similar to Michigan, physical, all that kind of stuff. I'm curious as to how they'll reload with some losses. Tanner Morgan, namely. I think Tyler Nubin is gone. I think Chris Ottman-Bell is gone. Mo Ibrahim is gone. This is a team that has tended to still being able to run the ball even without Mo Ibrahim. It seems like whoever they put back there, but they lose some linemen. They lose Chuck Filiaga finally, I believe. I think his 18th year of eligibility is up. But it's a home game. And I think that Minnesota is going to really want to make a statement. If I would imagine it's going to be Kaliak Manis, but we'll see. I think this is going to be the one where Michigan makes a statement, kind of like week 6 last year, Penn State. Michigan goes on the road to Minneapolis. First time in front of fans there since 2015. A handful of these players, it was their first game, was in a mostly empty TCF Bank Stadium. But I think it's going to be relatively similar. I got Michigan winning 42, Minnesota 17. All right, we are going to move on. We've got the back half of the schedule coming up momentarily. All right, let's press on. Let's continue on with the back half of the schedule. And we get to Indiana Yeah, that's a home game. Indiana's tended to play Michigan close in Bloomington. Wasn't such the case last year. Indiana and Michigan are not on the same level right now. Don't know who their quarterback is. Again, they lost a key player to Michigan, A.J. Barner. They got Christian Turner there now as a running back. They've really switched from being a pass-heavy to a run-heavy offense in the last couple games of the year, and it worked out for them. Still, not in Michigan's ballpark. Michigan 38, Indiana 10. Then comes the big one. Not the big one, but a big one. Michigan State at Michigan State. Now, the thing about this, obviously, is you know that there's going to be that it's going to be the worst week of the year. I'm going to tell you that. It's because just the toxicity of the rivalry is going to really come out. I don't think Mel Tucker is going to tamp it down at all. I think he's going to play into it. I think that they're going to try to play the victim like they have been after the tunnel incident, even though clearly not the victims. And I think that that's going to play a role on that side. On the other end, Michigan is going to want revenge in the worst way. It's going to be one of those things like, you wanted our attention. Well, guess what? You've got it. And then you look at MSU's roster, and Jaden Reed's gone. Keon Coleman returns. I think Peyton Thorne's gone. They lose a bit, but they've done their normal, I'm going to get every transfer in the, out there thing, I believe. Let's double check this, because I'm pretty sure I saw that they had quite a few. So now I knew that all right, this is outdated. This is really outdated. I don't know why. Because I know that they got that stud defensive tackle from Texas A&M. This does not have it on here for whatever reason. I don't know what the deal is there. Nonetheless, I think that MSU they've gone out and gotten some guys like they tend to. I think that, but I don't think that they will match up well with Michigan at all. Kind of like last year. I just do not see a situation where they can really do much of anything against Michigan. And I think it will be relatively similar to Michigan in the sense of they will be able to go out and do what they want, right? Michigan wasn't necessarily doing anything special or fancy. I'm trying to fix this here. But they will be able to do kind of what they want to do. So, all right, let's take a look here. And I got this fixed. So they lost a couple guys, but they got a long snapper from Ohio State. They lost Jeremy Bernard. They brought in Aaron Alexander, the former Michigan commit who ended up going to UMass from Belleville. It was processed on early signing day. They got Jaron Mangum, so now they have both Mangum brothers. They've got all kinds of 3-star types that transferred in. Tonmise Adelele is the one that I'm speaking of, the 4-star from Texas A&M. But other than that, I don't know. I just don't see how they can do a heck of a lot against Michigan. So I have Michigan winning, and I closed the screen. So I have Michigan winning 45-13. I think Michigan will punish them for what happened a year ago. Bye week, and then week 10 against Purdue. No Jeff Brom. I don't know if the offense will still stay what it was, but they bring in Ryan Walters, who after Blake Corum went out, did a really good job defensively. I would imagine they'll become more defensive-minded. I don't know that they have the personnel. I'm going to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I got Michigan winning 28-14. First time in the Jim Harbaugh era that Purdue's coming to Ann Arbor. They were supposed to come in 2020. Didn't happen. Next big one. Penn State at Penn State. I think Penn State's going to actually be really good. So I'm usually the one sitting out there crying about everyone saying all these great things about Penn State. I think Penn State's going to be pretty good. I think Drew Aller is going to end up being a step up from Sean Clifford. I still think that they've got a lot of receiver talent. They've got the 2 running backs. They've got a lot of guys. They've got still should have a really good defense. It's on the road for Michigan. Penn State's going to want it in the worst way. I could see them having a really good record to that point. I still think Michigan's got it put together better. And Jim Harbaugh has done a lot better job of being able to go to Happy Valley and win a game. Now, you just hope that it isn't like 2017 or 19, but I have Michigan winning that game 35-31. Week 12 is the trap game at Maryland. Again, back-to-back road games. We saw what happened at Maryland for Ohio State last year. It's not what happened for Michigan at Maryland in 2021. Talia Tagovailoa is back. I don't offhand know the status of some of those big-time receivers that they've had. I'm sure they still have a bunch of them. I know they lost C.J. Dupre, the tight end, who was really looking really good to Alabama via the transfer portal. Defense was a bit better last year. I still think that Michigan, unless it looks ahead to Ohio State, I think Michigan will be in a good spot. They've had no problem going to College Park and winning. They've won every year going to College Park. The only time that they've lost to Maryland was in that awful 2014 season. So I got Michigan winning 42-28. Now the one everyone's waiting for, the world famous Ohio State Buckeyes, as Gus Johnson says. Michigan fan Gus Johnson, I want to clarify. Tired of, like, every time I go on like Facebook and see in like a Facebook group, people are like, I'm so tired of Gus Johnson and how much he hates Michigan and loves Ohio State. No, dude's dog is named Bo. He is an ardent Michigan fan. When I interviewed Gus Johnson, he was when we talked about Michigan, he did not say like, yeah, Michigan has to or they have to. He said, we have to be better. We have to find a way to beat Ohio State. Nonetheless, he'll be on the call. This game will be in Ann Arbor. Ohio State will not have C.J. Stroud, who didn't beat Michigan anyway. I think if it's Devin Ford or Kyle McCord, they probably take a step backward. Still got Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams. Still got Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. Defense still not fixed. I think Michigan is really going to... I think they're in their heads. And I think Michigan will continue to be able to be physical with them. And I think that no matter what Ohio State does, it's going to be an issue. Especially as I think Michigan offensively, this will be the best Michigan offense that has existed in a long time. And that's saying something. I've got Michigan winning this one 48-20. Yes, I gave Michigan 3 more points and I took 3 more points away from Ohio State. Because I just think that I don't think that they're going to have it figured out. So that's that. So I have Michigan going 12-0. And then we'll see who they face in the Big Ten championship game if that happens. Wouldn't be surprised if they stumble somewhere along the line. Could be Ohio State. But I think all the pressure is on Ryan Day, and he turtled last year. I think he might overcompensate this next year, and it'll not be good. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for us today. I forgot to put out the call for questions for the mailbags. I did not remember what day it is. We will do that here momentarily. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.